In this video, I'm going to review the Garmin Forerunner 970. And when I do this review, I'm going to talk about some of the differences between this and the Fenix 8, because chances are, if you're watching this video, you may be deciding between these two watches, and there are a lot more similarities than there are differences. I'll also do a little bit of comparison between an AMOLED and a memory and pixel display, and talk about the differences and why you'd want to choose one over the other, because this is the first AMOLED Garmin that I've used. So I tested a watch from a different manufacturer a while ago. It had an AMOLED screen, and I was like, man, I really like this. So I've been using the memory and pixel ever since I started using Garmin watches, but these AMOLED displays are really nice. So let's first talk about why you'd want to use this watch as a cyclist, because this is a cycling channel. Now, if you're a runner and you're watching this, I'm going to talk about a lot of things on this watch that you'll be interested in. I won't go too far into the running features. Now, obviously, for running, a smart watch like this makes a lot of sense. Now, I record my rides with a Garmin head unit, like the 850 or the 1050 or even the Edge MTB, but I still use this watch for looking at my training, my recovery, and training readiness, tracking my steps. I also like looking at the sunrise, sunset on the watch. I will sometimes use it to monitor my heart rate throughout the day just to see how recovered I am. There are times when I just pull up the weather data on my wrist. I also like pulling up my last ride. So for example, I may be at the office and I kind of just want to remember what I did on my last ride, and I'll just pull up the ride on my wrist. And then of course, if you do other sports like hiking or running or kayaking, paddleboarding, even golf. I've used a Garmin watch for golf. I don't play a lot of golf, but when I do, it's really nice to have the golf course on your wrist. So now let's get into this watch. Now this watch is only available in the 47mm option, as opposed to a Fenix 8, which you can get in a 43, a 47, and a 51. I found for me the 47 is perfect. If you have a really small wrist, you probably would like the 43. So that's one advantage of the Fenix 8. Then of course, if you have a really big wrist, you can get the 51, but again, it's only available in the Fenix series. Now, what I really like about the Forerunner 970 is the weight and also the size. So this is 1mm thinner than the Fenix 8, and it's 56 grams, what I weighed it at, versus 78 of my Fenix 8. Now, this is the memory and pixel. This is the Solar Edition, and again, this is the 47. So they're both 47, but I can really notice the lighter weight of the Forerunner 970, and using it day to day, that makes a pretty big difference. Also, when you're mountain biking, I like having the lighter watch on my wrist. Now, if I put the watch on my handlebars, which I often do, if I either forgot my head unit or just want to have a really small unit on my bars for that ride, I like the Fenix 8 because it's memory and pixel and it's always on. Now, you can have always on display here, but it does eat up the battery quite a bit faster than the memory and pixel always on, so that is a consideration. So the 970 does come with a silicone band. Now, one difference out of the box is the Fenix 8 has the quick fit bands, and what that means is you can take these bands on and off within like a second, literally, and the same for putting them back on. Now, you can still do that with this watch. You can use the quick fit bands, but you actually have to take the pin out, so it's not out of the box. I really wish Garmin would change that. I don't know why they do that. Maybe it's a little bit of a cost saver, but man, those quick fit bands are nice. Like I said, you can buy the quick fit bands, but that's another cost. By the way, the Forerunner 970 does have a titanium bezel just like the Fenix 8, but the casing is a resin, so that is going to make it lighter with a little bit less durability. The Forerunner 970 has a sapphire lens, which is going to make it really scratch resistant, and I found that the lenses on the Garmin's are extremely durable. I have banged Garmin watches, even like my Vivo Active 3 that I had years ago. I banged the heck out of that thing, and I don't think it ever scratched. So they make some really durable lenses. Here is one of the major differences between the Forerunner 970 and the Fenix 8, and that is for using it in the water. So this is rated to 5 atmospheres. This is rated to 10 atmospheres. Now the Fenix 8 can actually be a scuba diving watch, not the Forerunner 970. You can take it in the water, you can snorkel with it. This has leak-proof buttons, which means you can press the buttons pretty deep. Now, you can actually use this as a dive watch. It'll give your decompression times, but you can only use it for either nitrox or regular compressed air. You cannot use it for trimix. So if you're wanting to have like a serious dive watch, Garmin does make dive watches. But for a basic recreational scuba diving watch, you can do that with the Fenix 8. Again, that's one of the major differences between these two watches. Now let's talk about battery life. And this is where we'll talk about AMOLED versus the MIP, or memory in pixel. Now again, you can only get the Forerunner 970 in AMOLED. You cannot get the memory in pixel like you have the option with the Fenix 8. So here is my experience with battery life for the 970. So if I had the always on display, then it would drop about 18% in 24 hours. So that means you're going to get about 5 to 6 days with the Forerunner 970 always on. However, if I took the always on display off and only used gestures, that means whenever I lift the watch up, it's going to display. And that's the way I have it set for day to day. I would get about 8% drop in 24 hours. Now, if I took the gestures off, so in other words, I either had to touch a button or touch the screen to get it to display, then it only dropped about 6% in 24 hours. Now, that is just day-to-day use. That's not tracking activities. So that's where the memory in pixel really comes into play. And honestly, between the AMOLED and MIP, that's your main decision point. I really like these AMOLED displays, and I'm probably going to stick with it for the Garmin watches. It's just a more vibrant display. The colors are bright. It's really easy to see. The memory in pixel, even though you get used to it, the colors are more washed out. The MIP displays in the bright sunlight are great. Like you can see them so well. So here's the deal, is if you do like ultra events and you want the watch to always be on, that's where the MIP displays rule. One of the best upgrades to the Forerunner 970 is now it has an LED flashlight. If you've never used the LED flashlight on a watch, you don't know what you're missing. I literally could not go without the LED flashlight on a watch. You use it more times than you could possibly imagine. So you just double tap the button at the top, the flashlight will come on, you can adjust the brightness, and you can do a red. So if you're camping or you just really don't want to disturb someone when you get up in the middle of the night, you can have it on red. And I'm telling you, it is so convenient, and I'm so glad the Forerunner 970 has it on there. The Forerunner 970 does have Garmin Pay, and I use Garmin Pay all the time when I'm out and about, especially at the grocery store. It also has the built-in speaker like the Fenix 8, which is great. So if I get a phone call, I can just tap the button, I can talk through the watch. You can initiate calls through the watch by going to the phone app, and then you can just tap on the dialer. You'll also see recent phone calls. So if I wanted to dial a number, I can just tap there. Now this does not have LTE connection. The only one that does is the Fenix 8 Pro, but the Forerunner 970 and the Fenix 8 do not have an LTE connection. Also, it has voice commands, and I'm not going to go through all the voice commands. There are a lot of them. You can look them up on the Garmin website. In fact, I'll put a link in the description below if you want to check those out. Set timer for 10 minutes. The Forerunner 970 can also do an ECG heart rate reading and detect AFib. Now, it's not constant like maybe an Apple Watch where if you have AFib, it'll let you know. This, you actually have to stop, hold the button, start the test, but it does have that. So if your heart's not feeling right, you can, pause, check your heart rate. It'll tell you if you're in AFib. So that's really nice. Now, speaking of heart rate sensor, I found that when I'm riding or even like walking, the heart rate sensor on the 970, the Forerunner 970, is more accurate for this reason. It's the same heart rate sensor, but because the watch is lighter and I have extremely bony wrists, it just detects my heart rate better. And by the way, on the Forerunner 970, you can sync music and put it on the watch for offline listening, and you can do that with YouTube Music, Amazon Music, and also Spotify. And you can pair headphones. Now, I don't do that. I just play the music through my phone, and I will use the watch to play, pause, skip. I can even change the volume from the watch. But because I always have my phone with me when I'm riding, I don't go through the hassle of downloading the music from, like YouTube Music is my music source. I can just use the controls on the watch when I'm listening to music. Other than this AMOLED display on the Forerunner 970 being better, more vibrant and whatnot, I also like the watch face options better on the 970 versus the Fenix 8. Now, the one that I use on the Fenix 8 is very, very functional. It's got some different metrics that I can look at, and I can hold down on some of the fields. For example, the weather, right now it has the temperature, but I can hold down on that field and it jumps to the weather. Now I can do the same thing on the Forerunner 970, and you can really customize these watch faces. And again, a lot of these fields, like for example, I've got the sunset showing here, and I can just hold down on the sunset and it'll jump to the sunrise sunset widget, which is really nice. And I actually use that all the time. Another feature that I use on the Forerunner 970 is the morning report and the evening report. It's pretty useful information, especially in the morning. I want to look at my sleep score. I want to look at my HRV, and just to see how well rested I am, how I slept, and it really motivates me to get in bed early and get a good sleep score. So owning both of these watches, I find myself grabbing the Forerunner 970 most of the time because I really like the AMOLED display. So let me just wrap up this video by talking about the advantages and disadvantages between these two to help you decide. So the advantage of the Fenix 8 is you've got more size options. It's a bit more durable. You can go deeper in the water. You can use it as a dive watch, and you've got the option of the MIP solar, so it's going to have a longer battery life. Whereas the Forerunner 970, it's got, honestly, for what I use it for, most of the same features of the Fenix 8, just with that really bright, vibrant AMOLED display. It's got the flashlight. I also like the fact that this is lighter, and I can really notice it day to day and when I'm mountain biking with the watch on my wrist. So I hope this video was helpful for you to understand the features of the Forerunner 970 and why you might want to choose either it or the Fenix 8. If you're interested in picking up either of the watches, I will leave some affiliate links in the description below. And if you use those, it would really help out the channel, and I would really appreciate it. If you've used the Forerunner 970 or the Fenix 8, let us know your experience and which one you prefer. I would be interested to know, and I think other people would as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.